He looked his wife dead in the eye and said, "You're too old to find a sugar daddy." And she just lost it, screaming, crying, the whole thing. But here's the crazy part. This didn't come out of nowhere. She wanted to be a trad wife, quit her job, keep the £500,000 mortgage, and have him pay for everything. So he called her Bluff. And what happened next? Divorce, police showing up, and a $1 million house sale. This story is insane. Okay, so here's how it started. His wife, who's 40 by the way, falls down this trad wife rabbit hole. Like hard. First, she says she doesn't want to work anymore. Then she starts saying that men who make their wives work are abusive. I mean, that's a pretty big jump, right? But here's the thing, they both had good jobs. He's a builder, earns about 100 grand a year. She's in management for the NHS, brings in 50, no kids. And get this, actually paid off their mortgage 3 years ago, debt-free, living comfortably. He would have been happy staying there forever. But nope, she suddenly wants this massive house. Like £700,000 massive. After selling their old place that meant a mortgage of $500,000. He gave in. Then she wants a new car. He caves again. And this car, worth more than she earns in a year. Let that sink in. So now they've got this huge mortgage, this insane car payment, and then she drops the bomb. She's done working. He says, fine, take a lower paid job. Maybe you'll enjoy it more. She says no, she just doesn't want to work. Full stop. And she doesn't want to give up anything she has either. The house, the car, the holidays, everything stays. He tells her he can't afford all this on his own, but she keeps bringing up this trad stuff. Except, she also says she'd need to hire a cleaner because the house is too big for her to clean alone. And she prefers his cooking, so he'd still do all the cooking. So he's like, wait, basically you just want to dress up pretty and bake the occasional cake. She storms off, says he doesn't get it. All right, so a couple years go by like this. She's basically trying to lose her job without actually quitting. Meanwhile, he's getting more and more frustrated. And then one day, she brings it up again. And he's just done being polite. He says, fine, you want to be a trad wife. Here's the deal. You get up before me, every morning. You make sure my breakfast is ready, just like in the videos you watch. You got to be dressed like a sexy version of a 1950s housewife. From the moment I open my eyes to the moment I close them. The house has to be spotless at all times, like in the videos. He keeps going. I want huge packed lunches for work, like in the videos. I want to come home to beautiful pies and cakes ready for pudding, like in the videos. I want a bath ran for when I get in. Then come down to a proper meal every night, like in the videos. And then, and here's where it gets really pointed, I want a foot rub while I eat the cakes and pies you made, like in the videos. And then he drops the last one. I also want sex on demand. How I want it when I want it, like in the videos. Now look, he admits he wasn't being serious. He was trying to prove a point, show her how ridiculous her fantasy actually was. Because in those trad wife videos, it's all perfect lighting and soft music. Nobody shows the exhaustion or the loss of independence, you know. But she didn't see it that way. She called him abusive, a user, sexist. Then she stormed out to her sister's house, who he says is equally delusional, by the way. And honestly, he says he's ready for divorce if this keeps up. And here's the part that got me. I don't think he's the a-hole here. He's not actually demanding any of this stuff. He's just holding up a mirror. She wants the trad wife lifestyle without any of the actual work. She wants to quit her job, keep the big house, keep the nice car, have him pay for everything, and on top of that, hire a cleaner and have him cook. Like, that's not a trad wife. That's something else entirely. So yeah, she demanded luxuries, pressured him into debt, and now expects early retirement on his dime. And when he calls her out on it by using her own logic against her, suddenly he's the bad guy. Classic, right? All right, so the internet had thoughts, obviously. First comment from Casual J, and he just goes straight for it. He says, get the divorce, mate. It'll be cheaper and less stressful than dealing with a crazy wife every minute of the day and night. And then he makes this really good point. He says it's not even about the trad wife lifestyle. She simply doesn't want to work. She just wants to sit on her backside, enjoy everything she badgered him into paying for, and do nothing. He says there's a lot of this crazy going around and it won't get better. Like what's next? Vacations on the French Riviera, a bigger car, the list just keeps going. And then Dopey is his username, he responds. And he says, yeah, I'm leaning that way too. I think divorce is more likely than anything else right now. But here's a funny detail. He says, luckily, she's afraid of flying. So he's managed to avoid expensive holidays, except for the occasional Euro trip to Paris. But still, he says she makes him feel like a millionaire trying to be something they're not. He knows they're better off than most, but they don't earn footballers' money. And that's what she aspires to, apparently. He said they could have bought a cheaper house, done it up, made money, stayed debt-free. But nope. Now the house is worth about 800 grand. But it's still not a nice feeling having that huge mortgage and knowing she expects him to cover it alone. Okay, next comment from Proper Hedgehog 3579. Short but smart. They say, sounds like she got the trad wife and trophy wife lifestyles mixed up. I mean, yeah, that's actually perfect. Then Original Brainy Banana, love that username. They share a personal story. They say she doesn't want to be a trad wife. She wants to enjoy early retirement on someone else's dime. And then they talk about their own ex-partner, a guy who did the same thing. Just stopped working, pretended to look for work, while they paid for everything for years. And then he told them they were sexist because if he was a woman and they were a man, it would be normal. Or so he claimed. No kids either. Anyway, they managed to end it and kick him out. And their advice: don't tolerate lack of active participation for even 1 minute, because it gets much harder and more expensive to end things later. And responds to this and says, you're right. All I'm thinking about is divorcing her and cutting my losses before I really am left with nothing. Maybe it'll jolt her into reality when she has to work to survive. All right, next up. Horror BB Screams. Again, amazing username. They say, look, I don't have an issue with a woman wanting to be a trad wife and stay home and be soft and feminine, I guess. But she does have to contribute to the relationship somehow. And then someone corrects them like, isn't cooking and cleaning a contribution? And Horror BB says, no, I take more issue with her desire to spend all your money to live above your means and not contribute in any meaningful way. She doesn't want to be a trad wife. She wants to be a sugar baby. Divorce her and set her free. Let's see if she successfully finds the sugar daddy of her dreams. And responds to this one too. He says, I agree completely. I have no problem with the trad wife thing if it's affordable. If they'd stayed in their old house, he could afford it. But now they've got a £2,500 a month mortgage and $700 in car payments. That's $32,000 a year straight away. And then he says the line that kinda sums it all up. I think she wants to be a sugar baby, but I don't want to be a sugar daddy. I want an equal partner. And honestly, that's it right there. That's the whole thing. He's not against her staying home if it works financially. But she pushed him into massive debt, then wants to quit working, keep all the luxuries, and have him do the cooking and hire a cleaner. That's not a partnership. That's not even a trad wife arrangement. That's just one person doing everything while the other one delegates. So the community agrees he's not the a-hole. She's living in fantasy land. And divorce seems pretty much set at this point. But wait, there's more. Because this story has updates, 2 of them. And yeah, things get even wilder. Okay, so before we get into the update, wants to clear something up. Because apparently, a lot of people thought he was being serious with that whole list of demands. The breakfast, the sexy outfits, the foot rubs, sex on demand. He says no, those were not serious. I can't believe how many people thought they were. He was just trying to prove a point. Show her how ridiculous she was being. He doesn't want a maid or a slave. He wants a partner. And here's the sad part. Before she got on this trad wife train, she was completely different. Ambitious, career-driven, wanted to climb to the top. She was never really on social media until the pandemic. That's when this whole thing started. A couple of years ago, she fell down the rabbit hole, and he's tried suggesting couples counseling multiple times, but she always gives the same answer. I don't need counseling. There's nothing wrong with me. So then comes the Saturday morning conversation. He sits her down and says, I can't go on like this. The trad wife thing never happening. You either accept that and we go to couples counseling, or we split up. I'm not dancing around your BS anymore. And she chooses to split up, just like that. He asks her straight up, do you even really want to be a trad wife? Or are you just trying to force me away, like you've been trying to force your job to fire you because you don't have the guts to quit yourself? And she says yes, she does want to be a trad wife. And then she says something that really gets under his skin. She says there's plenty of dating sites that cater to this dynamic. So he responds, and yeah, this is where it gets harsh. He says, I've seen those sites. They're more sugar daddy dynamics. And without being horrible, you're too old for that. That sets her off, completely. She starts screaming that he's wrong, that he's the one who can't support his wife, that he's the bad one in the marriage. And then the line that really stings, she says a real man would be able to give her the life she wants. She's shouting at the top of her lungs. And he says it's the only time he's been glad they have that big house, so the neighbors couldn't hear. He admits he got a little petty after that real man comment. He fires back. You can't cook, you can't clean, and you don't have sex. What part of being a trad wife do you actually offer? Then he steals a line from the comments on his last post. He says, you don't want to be a trad wife. You want to be a trophy wife. And then he gets real. He says it's heartbreaking, really. She used to be loving, funny, sweet, kind, fun, ambitious, hardworking. She played hard. She was daring and confident. And then the pandemic came. She spent all day watching videos on her phone, and she just became really bitter with life, with people. So now he's bitter. He lost the woman he loved. They took on a £500,000 mortgage only for her to announce a couple months later she doesn't want to work anymore. And he has to shoulder that responsibility alone, just to keep a roof over their heads. And when he said he wasn't comfortable with that, she labeled him an abuser. She called him unbelievable and went back to her sister's house. And he says, I'm going to take the next couple weeks and start talking to a divorce lawyer. See what this entails. And then once the ball is rolling, I'm effing off to Portugal for a couple weeks. By myself. You can hear it in his words, right? This isn't anger anymore, it's grief. He's mourning the person she used to be, and honestly, I don't blame him. All right, so here's how this thing ends. And honestly, it's kind of satisfying. First thing Op does after she leaves, he takes half their savings and half the money in their joint account, puts it in his own bank account. Then he tells her, look, there's about £60,000 left. You can either use that to pay off the car, or you keep the money and I take the car back, because the car's in my name. And she says neither. She's keeping both. Yeah, that doesn't fly. What follows is a whole mess. He ends up having to call the police to help him take the car back. When he gets there, the cops are already there. His ex-wife is crying. The two officers look at him like he's garbage. His sister-in-law is shouting, yeah, take her independence. Go back to your mansion while she sleeps in the spare room. Neighbors are all outside watching. He almost caves, almost tells her to just keep the car. But it's £1,500 a month. He can't afford that. So he takes it, sells it, and ends up having to pay £12,000 out of pocket to cover what he still owed on it. He admits, honestly, he was expecting worse. Now the house. They paid £700,000 for it, put £200,000 down. He spent about £100,000 doing it up. When he got it valued, he was pleasantly surprised. £1 million. And then, even more surprising, within 2 weeks of listing it, it sold to one of his neighbors, a lovely Indian family who actually asked him to work on their house. But then they said, you know what? It's just easier to move into yours. They do want him to build a granny annex on the side after the purchase, so that's another couple months of work. But both of them will walk away with around £250,000 each. And him, he's gonna buy a house for about £200,000, which means he'll be back mortgage-free and debt-free in a couple months. After all that chaos, he's basically back to where he started financially, minus the wife. Now what about her? She's still living at her sister's. And as far as he knows, she hasn't found anyone who wants a 40-year-old trad wife who can't cook, can't clean, and doesn't want to have sex. Shocking, right? She's actually asked him to come back twice. Once was a drunken proposition. The other was more heartfelt. But he said no both times. It's too late now. Divorce proceedings have already started. Should be finalized early next year. And he's just been working, plodding along. Nothing else he can really do. At the end of his post, he thanks everyone. And the person reading his story says, look, it sucks when a relationship ends like this. But you two were completely incompatible anymore. Wishing you the best. Hope you find that cheese house you wanted. I looked them up online. They're quite cute. And that's it. That's the whole saga. Wife wants a trad life without any of the work. Husband calls her bluff. She chooses divorce. He ends up mortgage-free. She ends up at her sister's with no sugar daddy in sight. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, you know. Okay, that was wild. But here's another one. And honestly, this one almost made me laugh out loud. So this post is from a different person. And it starts with a TV. A 40-inch smart TV. Her sister left it behind over 2 years ago. Mounted on the wall of her old bedroom, which is now the downstairs living room. And her partner, and her nephew, they use it every single day. Like it's become their main TV. The sister has mentioned it a few times over the years, but never really pushed to get it back. Until now. Because the sister has hit some serious financial trouble, and has been helping her constantly. Like buying her an iPhone off Marketplace for $200 when hers broke. Never asked for the money back. Buying her groceries. Giving her food. Buying special items for her nephew when he comes over for sleepovers. Is pretty much the only family member who still helps her because everyone else got tired of lending money that never got paid back. So here's what happens. One day, the sister comes over to grab some gas money from cash stash, taking her kids to a water park. Says, yeah, come get it. While she's in the house, she takes a photo of that TV, still mounted on the wall, posts it on Facebook Marketplace for $100. Doesn't say a word to Then at 7 p.m. that night, gets a text. The sister says, hey, 2 strangers are gonna be at your house shortly to pick up the TV. Can you collect the $100 for me? Wait, what? And her partner are actively watching a movie on that TV. She is livid, calls her sister shady, says she's disrespectful and delusional if she thinks that's acceptable. And the sister doubles down. It's my TV. You don't have a say. Then she goes even further, says clearly doesn't care about her nephews and is just concerned about her own convenience. After some back and forth, boyfriend sends the sister $85, and they keep the TV. And the sister hasn't spoken to her since. Like, can you believe this? It's her TV, technically, sure, but she left it there for 2 years. It's mounted on the wall. People use it every day. And she thinks she can just invite strangers into someone else's home without asking. The audacity is honestly impressive. So the comments section, as always, had opinions. Ice Cream Pennies said, actually, that's abandoned property. It's your TV now, and you should have kept your $85. But hey, that's a pretty reasonable a-hole tax in the grand scheme. Flat Replacement put it simply, it's her TV, but it's your home. She can't invite people to your house, especially when she's not even there. Decop29 agreed, selling it is fine, but making you handle the strangers, that's crazy. And Aggressive Pie just said, it's time to cut her off. Then came the update. Sister came over, biggest fight of their relationship. And the sister, she saw no fault. None. Stayed firm that is just a cold, evil person who called her awful things for trying to sell her own TV. So is done. Won't try to convince her anymore. But her heart hurts, not for her sister, but because she might see less of her nephews. Still, she knows she has to stay strong. Set healthy boundaries. So yeah, don't enable people who take advantage of you, even if they're family. Maybe especially then. If you made it this far, you clearly enjoy these crazy real-life stories. So do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. I've got more updates and wild Reddit posts coming. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you in the next video.